Here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. Well, the Senate has passed the Veterans Health Care Bill. Republicans did cave. They did save face. They had to. They got to vote on some amendments that, and this is how they're justifying it. We got our amendments because they're really important. Rand Paul wanted to reduce the aid that we give to other countries to help pay for the PAC Act. Pat Toomey wanted to classify the funding as discretionary versus mandatory. And this is one of those kind of pet peeve. And I understand it's the buckets of where the money comes from, but just the framing of it. Well, those people who we sent over into harm's way who got cancer because of the burn pits and all of that stuff, that's discretionary funding. We can, at our discretion. As opposed to, no, we sent them there. Damn it, we got to fund it. It's mandatory. You got to do it. Kind of a difference for me. Kind of a frame of mind kind of thing. But, this is what you expect from Pat Toomey. And, of course, Marsha Blackburn, Marsha. She wanted to privatize the whole damn thing, which, again, these folks and their privatization fetish, mind-blowing. And as I've said a number of times, our VA, for all the problems it has, and the Republican Party, one of the biggest problems, they still have institutional knowledge that the public sector does not have, that the private community healthcare system doesn't have. They have the institutional knowledge of dealing with veterans and veteran illnesses. And you don't want to lose that institutional knowledge, which it seems like Republicans, Marsha in particular, wants to kill. Now they got to vote on their amendments. All of them went down in flames, and now the bill will move forward. And I'm sitting here and I'm going, what was the point in all of this? Was this a moral victory? Was this, on principle? Why? Other than the temper tantrum. And we know that's what this was really about. It was Republicans hit through a temper tantrum, and they came out over the last couple of days and they said so. Cronin was, Texas senator, came out and said, this is all because, though that Senator Schumer didn't hold to his word. And, Blackburn being one of them too. There are a bunch of them who have said it out loud because they're feeling their oats a little bit. Also today, the big news, obviously, the final stretch towards November, one of the big primary day. You've got Arizona making some choices. You got Michigan, Missouri, Washington State, and, of course, Kansas. We're going to find out what's the matter with Kansas as they are the first state in the post-Supreme Court Roe world to decide on a constitutional amendment to ban abortions or not, to inculcate it in their constitution, whether women have autonomy over their own bodies or not. Waiting for that information. Also, Ohio having their second primary. They like it so much they're going to do it twice. They're going to have two primaries because again, Ohio is a state that has no other needs. Their roads are perfectly paved. Their education system is second to none. Everyone has health care. Their seniors are well cared for. There are no hungry children. There are no homeless veterans. There are no problems in the utopia known as OH10. Evidently, and I say this because they're wasting about $20 to $25 million to have another primary. So congratulations, Ohio, on being a state, the only state in the union with absolutely no problems to spend $25 million on, other than wasting it on elections. And of course, I'm being facetious because they've got a Republican-controlled government and a massive control that they're just going to say, you know what, we're never following the law. We're going to do what we want, and if you can't make us. That's basically what this is. Because in Ohio, they have a constitutional amendment that says we want fair districts. We don't want gerrymandered districts. And Republicans are saying, no, we want gerrymandered districts. We want absolute control. Now, the maps that the Democrats came out with still give Republicans overwhelming control, just not all the control. Republicans want all the control. Not just overwhelming control. They want it all. And they want it now. And if that means breaking the law, that's what they're going to do. And no one's going to hold them accountable. No one. No one. And it's one of those things that makes you go, am I surprised? No, not surprised. Am I surprised that our Republican friends are criminals? No, not even a little bit. Because look at what we're seeing. Have you noticed the news? First, it was the Secret Service. Evidently, the Secret Service deleted a whole bunch of texts. Around January 6th, they just kind of conveniently wiped those days away. So there's no record of what was said via text during those crucial hours. Now we find out Homeland Security, deleted their texts. The Pentagon, the Department of Defense, the Army, they wiped theirs too. Deleting any key texts from any key witnesses surrounding January. It's almost like there's a kind of, conspiracy, kind of a cover-up going on. And this is one of those moments where you go, it's the cover-up that's always worse than the crime. And I'm going, well, except when it's treason or a seditious conspiracy, except this. Except, if you're, in the military, the Homeland Security, the Secret Service, part of a coup attempt, that doesn't look good on the resume. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that probably is not going to get you the promotion you thought you were going to get out of this. And I think a lot of people thought, hey, with the former guy in office, the loyalty, the kissing the ring, going to rise up through the ranks. Oops. Who would have thought that they couldn't pull the coup off? And this is one of those weird kind of moments. Because you go, in every other case, I would be like, no, you don't lie in these moments. If you got caught, you fall on the sword, you take the punishment, except when you're talking about treason. And I had the conversation today. I'm going, if you're in the military, if you're the Pentagon, for instance, if you're the Secret Service, and treason is, seditious conspiracy, treason is part of what you're accused of. Do we still line people up and execute them via firing squad? Is that still a thing? I know my conservative friends, they want that for, those people. But what about them? What about those people who were around the former guy who put their names on a piece of paper that said, no, not those duly elected electors. They're not the rightful ones. It's us that we've decided ourselves, that we've appointed to ourselves, that we've come together in a room secretly and we've put our name on paper and said, no, it's us, because we believe in the former guy. What should we do with them? Should we send them to South Carolina where someone wants to be executed by firing squad? Do they still do that? I am curious. But this does make me question. Makes me question. Seems kind of like a conspiracy. So is this a grand conspiracy of all of these different groups? The Secret Service, the Homeland Security, the Pentagon, all of them, interestingly enough, over the same period of time, deleting all of their texts. Coincidence? I don't know. Maybe I'm going to start deleting my texts right now. I don't know. Maybe this is what it is. Now, what's interesting to me, and this is where I kind of sat and thought about today, because, conservatives for the last couple of years have been talking about the deep state and talking about, all this conspiracy within our government and how there are these nefarious groups who are control these secret societies in our government, the swamp. The swamp. Oh, the swamp. Remember the swamp? Remember Donald Trump was going to come in, drain the swamp. Yeah, remember that? Oh, it's going to be great. They're going to drain the swamp and get rid of all of these creatures that no one could see. And it was this dark, nefarious plot to control our lives. Only we now find out that, holy schmoly, there really was a conspiracy. There really was a dark, deep state. It was them. And it's, again, I come back to virtually everything the GOP and the right wing fetishizes, claiming others are doing. It's them. It's them doing. It's them. It's kind of like Trump. Whatever he's speaking, whatever's coming out of his mouth, whatever he's spewing, it's him doing. Whatever accusations are being made, it's them. And this, again, is one of those things. Now, what I find interesting is the more that's coming out, the more people are going, this could be bad for my career. None of this looks good on a resume. None of this looks good on a resume. Say what you want about Cassidy Hutchinson. I had someone say, she worked for Trump afterwards, so if she was such a hero, No, I've never put her in the hero camp. I've never put any of them. None of them are in the hero camp. They're all in the, I got to save my own hide. I got to keep myself out of jail. I got to keep myself employable. That's what this is about. So I found it interesting, the story today that came out about the two Arizona Republicans, both very smart women, Kelly Ward, the chairwoman of the Arizona Republican Party, and Kelly Townsend, a state senator, who at the time both expressed concerns, because now we find the emails. They didn't delete those emails. They didn't delete them. But evidently they were concerned about signing on to the plan to have these fake electors and to do all of the shenanigans that the Trump campaign wanted them to do, because they were concerned that, doing so could be viewed as treasonous. Which, look, I'm not a lawyer, but had you come to me and said, Rick, what we're going to do is we're going to create a nice little document, make it look really official, and we're going to have a bunch of people sign on to it, and we're going to claim that they're the real electors. And then we're going to submit those in an official fashion to say, no, these are the real ones, not those. And we're going to have a whole campaign around getting those people in their place. I'm going, well, that seems kind of illegal. Again, not a lawyer, but just seems, on its surface, shady. Something probably don't want to get myself involved in. But then again, you look at the people who surrounded the Trump campaign, Rudy Giuliani, Sidney Powell, that Lynn Wood guy. You look at all of these lawyers who, little kooky, little off on the fringe, little loose with the reality, detached, if you will, from said reality. You look at Trump himself, little detached. Don't know that I'm signing on to this. But I do find it interesting that all of these different groups simultaneously all came to the same conclusion at the same time. We should probably wipe all this stuff clean. Now, look, was it a grand conspiracy? Was this, handled from the top? I don't know that I'm going there, because I don't know that they were that functional. But I do believe that everyone who was involved, after it didn't work, simultaneously went, oh, blank, and then started to look for how they could cover their own behind. CYOA. And thus, this where the deleting happens. I'm curious your thoughts. 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. Is this trouble? Do you have problems with our government destroying records, with criminals within our, again, the deep state deeply burrowed into our government, attempting to overthrow it to keep the former guy in office? Does that bug you at all? Or is this, hey, this is what you expect? Because this is what they've told us all along, is how they really work. Curious your thoughts. 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. Going to take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. you're a fan of the show, you've heard our Labor History in 2 segments, and you can hear them on the radio pretty much anywhere in the U.S. Labor history has never been more important than it is right now. So here's what we'd like you to do. Tell a teacher. Tell a teacher that labor history is important and that they can get digestible 2-minute lessons that are absolutely free. Free to download, free to use, free to share. Tell a teacher to go to thericksmithshow.com/history and help us put labor back where it belongs, in the classroom. You know, generations of American workers fought, bled, and died to build the American way of life. It's our job to keep their stories alive. Go tell a teacher that we're here to help them do just that. Find us at thericksmithshow.com/history today.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So some good news, a little bit of good news. I look at the uninsured rates, and this is, only 8% of the country is now considered uninsured, thanks to the dreaded Obamacare. And I would argue a lot doing with Joe Biden and the Democrats, getting some funding out there to make sure that the rates stayed lower. No thank you to the help of a lot of Republicans who tried to block it and have tried to destroy the ACA over all these years. But just now a record low, 8% lack health insurance at the start of the year. That a good thing. At least that is my thought. Also, love to hear yours. 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. Let's go to the phones. Got Alice on one. Alice, how are you today?
I'm doing well. So I got a couple of things to chat about. Number one, really, all of these things are coincidental. Yeah, everybody just decided, I guess it must have been in the air. We'll all just, delete our text and we really don't have to pay attention to the law. I'm like, got a better chance of hitting the lottery.
You got to wonder. I mean, I believe they all woke up the next morning and go, uh-oh, didn't work. Time to cover. Time to duck.
Oh, I think you're right. I mean, come on. Everything around Trump, the Mueller report, everything according to the Republicans and Trump, it was just coincidence. Everything, all those little Russian connections and everything else. And now we're being led to believe all these other things are just coincidence. Like I said, they ought to play the Powerball.
No, it's not coincidence. It's all a hoax. It never happened. It's all made up. It's all false. They don't believe it. That's the weird part of this. You show fact. No, there's all these connections. No, I don't believe any of it. No, they're facts. Now, we can argue whether there's coordination, collusion, or just cooperation. You go, hey, look, they're in the same world. It just looks bad. We can argue that it wasn't collusion, that they weren't actually working together for some nefarious plot, but they were still working together. But they won't even agree with that. Most people that I know don't even think none of that stuff ever happened.
I know. I don't know what world they're living in, but obviously it's not the same dimension of the space-time continuum that the rest of us are in, obviously. And then the second thing I wanted to chat about was I think it was in Minnesota, but it was in the WAPO today, where this 17-year-old who had been sex trafficked killed her abductor, rapist. He was selling her out to all these other people, and she killed him. And
Yay!
they put
Good
her
on
in
her.
jail. Well, they put her in jail
That
for
ain't right.
murder.
That ain't right.
And I'm like, okay, so let me get this straight. At what age do we consider, and he had been sex trafficking her for like 4 or 5 years. And I'm thinking, okay, so come on, Republicans and evangelicals, tell me at what point a child all of a sudden becomes a woman, according to y'all, because you can't get your story straight. 10-year-old's a woman, 13-year-old's a woman. I mean, come on, pick something. And then I'm thinking, okay, so now we have the dingbats. Let's get rid of the child support, that guy in West Virginia, and you should have heard what my husband had to say about that. But, oh, you should have. I was very proud of him. I thought, oh, my God, I'm really rubbing off on him. But I thought, so we're going to sex traffic all these kids, call them women, make them have the babies, and God forbid that if they get raped, that they retaliate to get out of the situation, because then we're going to throw them in jail. You just can't make this up.
No, this is unfortunately the world that we are moving towards. It's scary stuff. It's it's so insane. I just sat there and I looked at my husband tonight and I said, I am so tired of stupid, because for the past 2 weeks I have been dealing with stupid, with on TV brand. And I told my husband, I am getting so sick and tired of dealing with stupid. These last 6 years, I have no patience or tolerance left. It's gone. He said, well, I know this much. You scare me anymore. But you have a good evening, Rick. I appreciate the call, Alice. Thanks so much. No, we're moving towards a place where, if you're a woman in this country, be very afraid. We talked about the story not too long ago of a bunch of a mentally diminished guy who it was his view to go out and impregnate as many white women as possible. His idea was to go kill as many minorities because there's too many of those, and then he was going to go and go get him some white women because we need more white babies, according to these crazy people. Wow. And look, this is the kind of rhetoric that you're getting from these extremists. And I'm not being hyperbolic, and this is the weird world we're in. Look, I've got 2 daughters. I fear for the future that is being created for them. That's taking their ability to make decisions about themselves and their future out of their hands and putting it into the hands of zealots, into the hands of ideologues. Interesting story coming out of Georgia. Evidently, in Georgia, it's just been announced by the tax department there that taxpayers are going to be able to claim embryos as dependents on their state taxes. And you go, hold on? Explain this? Does this mean that if someone goes to one of the clinics and stores a bunch that I guess there's some things here we've got to think about. If you go and you have a bunch of them, fertilized for implanting, because they do when they do the in vitro fertilization, that's what they do. Can you claim all of them? Because evidently they're redefining a natural person as to include the unborn as well. So does this mean women could not have to pay taxes? And then what will Donald Trump do? What will our rich people do? Oh, jeez. Oh, my mind. I got to stop thinking this way. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. If you miss any of the program, podcast, wherever you get yours, find ours. We'll take a quick break. Right back with some good news coming out of my state of Pennsylvania. I'm pretty happy today. Back after this. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1934. That was the day striking Teamsters in Minneapolis defied martial law. They stopped scab trucks, forcing the release of their strike leaders. Armed with bayonets and machine guns, the National Guard had patrolled the streets for nearly a week. They seized scores of strikers and union leaders and threw them into military stockades. Drivers were outraged. They defied Governor Olson and Major General Walsh, who, on behalf of the Citizens Alliance and trucking bosses, were determined to break the strike. Soon after strikers were imprisoned, drivers began chasing scab trucks across the city. Multiple reports poured in of picketers forcing trucks to stop. Some unloaded their cargo onto bridges. Others chased, captured, and damaged the scab trucks. Strikers ripped ignition wires out, forced scabs from the wheel, and then disappeared before police and the National Guard could arrive to retaliate. In just 3 hours, strikers had overturned nearly 70 trucks. Unable to stop the superior force of striking drivers, Bill Brown, Vincent, and Miles Dunn were ordered unconditionally released from the military stockades. Now, employers, the governor, and other strike-breaking agencies were eager to propose peace to federal mediators. But they proposed to scrap the terms of their earlier May agreement. In response, the leaders of Local 574 issued a general strike call. In it, they asked, quote, "Is there one man so blind as not to see that if 574 is allowed to go down to defeat under the brutal hammering of military despotism, the whole labor movement of the city will have been dealt a mortal blow? Union men, brothers, sisters, fellow workers, what are you going to do about it? We appeal to you for solidarity." Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Is it a good deal to sell out your personal integrity for cash from notorious scoundrels? Depends on your sellout price, chortled some 48 ethically stunted professional golfers who've peddled both their honor and honesty to the murderous moneyed monarchs who rule Saudi Arabia. The golfers, who are already millionaires, rush to grab money thrown at their feet by the royal kingdom, which oddly thinks it can launder its public image by sponsoring a money-soaked global golf tour. Of course, a golf tournament needs golfers, but the Saudis had none, so they simply bought some. First, former stars Phil Mickelson and Greg Norman signed away their integrity to join, taking at least $200 million apiece. Then, Dustin Johnson and Bryson DeChambeau took $150 million each from Team Saudi, and the likes of Brooks Koepka and Sergio Garcia quickly scrambled to get theirs. Worse than the golfers' unsightly money grubbing, however, is their insufferable dishonesty, trying to whitewash their taking of what is literally blood money. Mickelson faked moral outrage at the kingdom's rulers, calling them less than savory individuals, and piously proclaiming that he did not condone human rights violations. But he certainly has condoned and cashed the checks written to him by the violators. But Greg Norman, the former pro, who led recruitment of golfer talent for the Saudis, offered the most pathetic moral excuse for selling out. Asked how he could link arms with a potentate so barbarous as to have had a critic of the regime murdered and chopped into pieces, Norman said, "Look, we've all made mistakes." This is Jim Hightower saying, there's a word that describes what these golfing multimillionaires are doing: disgusting. The good news is that most pros, including bigger name stars like Tiger Woods, Rory McIlroy, and Justin Thomas, have some values that they refuse to trade for dollars.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So, some good news coming out of the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. They decided that Act 77 is in fact constitutional, does not violate the law, and that we can vote by mail and all of the stuff that we weren't allowed to do before. This is one of those things that one of my pet peeves about this state for a very long time. If I wanted to vote by mail or vote early, I had to go in and say, hey, I'm going to be out of the state. I had to sign an affidavit, go through all these hoops and all of this stuff, say, hey, where am I going to be? Why am I going to be out of town? All of this stuff. And you go, why should it be this hard? I love the fact that it's going to be much easier. I can say, hey, mail me the ballot. I mail it back. They say, hey, I got it. Make it easier for people to vote. This is a good thing. Good thing, bringing Pennsylvania into at least the 20th century, if not the 21st. And here to share some thoughts on this victory, I've asked Khalif Ali to come talk with us. Khalif is the executive director of Common Cause PA. Khalif, thanks for taking time for us.
Oh, thanks for having me, Rick.
So I'm looking at this pretty big victory. I'm pretty, of all the bad news that has happened around voting and all of the attacks that I have seen over the years, this is something good, something to be celebrated.
Right. Absolutely. I think I know the point of democracy is really about maximum participation with the people. So anytime there's an opportunity or there's legislation that allows for maximum participation from the people, then we have to defend that. We have to hold on to that. So the Pennsylvania Supreme Court did exactly what the people needed it to do today.
So walk me through what this decision is, and what Act 77 was, so folks get a baseline, because we got listeners all over the country who don't know all the ins and outs here in Pennsylvania, and maybe in their states they're going through the same stuff. What was Act 77, and why is this such a big deal?
So it's a big deal because there had not been any type of reforms to the election code in Pennsylvania since 1936, Rick. And so what Act 77 did is it's not necessarily a model piece of legislation. It's great, but it does simply what you said. It brought us into modern times. It added more days for people to register to vote. It extended mail-in absentee and absentee submission deadlines, permanent mail-in and absentee ballot lists, meaning you sign up one time at the beginning of the year and you would automatically receive your ballot for the primary and the general election. 50-day mail-in voting period. So that means all voters can request and submit their mail-in absentee ballots up to 50 days before the election. So I applaud the bipartisan work that got this legislation passed. But Rick, this isn't a ceiling for reform. This is a floor through which we need to build upon to continue to expand and create opportunities for people to vote in Pennsylvania. What this decision does, so let's talk about why it was filed. It was filed because Republicans said that this Act 77 was unconstitutional because of a provision that dates back to almost the origin of Pennsylvania as a state. I can't quote it right offhand, but they also were saying because it's unconstitutional, then the processes, the reforms that are in there that people use to vote are also unconstitutional. So they wanted to essentially throw out all votes that used mail-in ballots.
Well, of course they did. And let me guess, they wanted to go to the next step and go, oh, so all those votes are invalid, and we're going to give those electoral votes to Donald Trump, and we're going to make Donald Trump president.
Right. They wanted to be allowed to appoint electors to make that call. And essentially the Pennsylvania Supreme Court said that's nonsense, and we're not going to do that. They appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court. That was also denied. So we're pretty settled in for Act 77 right now.
So this is going to be the way forward. Here's my concern. My concern is we've got an election coming up here in November. Yeah. There are two candidates for governor.
Sure.
One of them I think is crazy. One of them I think is an authoritarian type. One of them I think is almost. I've called a fascist and a Nazi. I'm not asking you to come there with me.
Right.
But he gets to appoint a Secretary of State in this state that would have immense power over deciding resources, over deciding how these systems are going to be put into place. And I fear putting someone like that in power would destroy this.
Yeah. Absolutely. Many people just kind of laugh at a lot of the claims that Senator Mastriano has made in terms of the election being stolen, elections being rigged, but I caution people to believe him when he says he's going to essentially strip Act 77 down if he becomes the governor. They're going to immediately introduce legislation that would nullify a lot of what we're seeing in these very basic reforms, mind you, of Act 77. So I caution people to absolutely believe him when he says that Act 77 is essentially the root of the fraud that occurred, that in his mind that occurred in the 2020 election.
Now we've had 60, 70 some odd trials. There hasn't been any, there's been no evidence presented. I know Senator Mastriano had the kangaroo court there in Gettysburg. They did all that not under oath conveniently, which I find very convenient. That if you had all these facts and you had all this stuff, why not, put your hand on that book they claim to have read and loved so much.
Yes.
And then swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. So help me, that guy that they claim to know and believe and trust and follow. I don't know why they didn't do that, other than they're full of it.
Well, I mean, there's I think there's a recognition that perjury is a very real reality for those who have testified, because we've seen what happened with the Senate Intergovernmental Operations Committee, that Senator Mastriano was the chair and was removed as chair of that committee, but they still went on and essentially did all the things that Senator Mastriano would have done in terms of bringing in organizations that made claims of fraud and duplicate ballots and people tampering with ballots. All of the stories that we've heard leading up to even up to this year, and that we're still hearing. All of those things were put on display in a formal Senate Intergovernmental Operations Committee hearing. No one was under oath. There were no counter arguments offered. The Democrats weren't afforded an opportunity to call any witnesses, and some were pretty surprised that I think they were blindsided by that hearing as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing to me, and what's frustrating is that I fear, again, if someone like Mastriano were to become governor, all of the worst policies possible would be enacted and pursued, and all of that is to ensure that people don't get the right to vote. I mean, for me, for this experiment to work, this amazing experiment of self-governance, if in order for this to work, people have to have free and fair access to the ballot box, which is where we make decisions. If we're continually blocking people, continually purging people, continually throwing people off the rolls, that cannot work.
Well, so Rick, what we're seeing is in general that there's a segment of our population that sees democracy as a nuisance, right? It's a nuisance because it doesn't allow them to obtain the outcome that they desire. So the system only works, Rick, if it gives me what I want. And if it doesn't give me what I want, then I'm going to tear everything down around it and build a system that allows me to get exactly what I want. And so that's the huge concern here when it comes to democracy for us.
No, sadly, this is what we saw on January 6th, a bunch of people having their moment. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show here with Khalifa Ali. He's the executive director of Common Cause PA. Check out their website, commoncause.org/Pennsylvania. We'll get links out on social media how you can take a look at that. Now, one of the things that's concerning me, even with this in place, we're seeing a lot of organizing going on the right.
Sure.
Huge amounts of money being spent on training poll workers, activist poll workers to go in and challenge people and really using the system from within against voters. And all this stuff is very new. At least in my view, it's very new. And maybe you can share some thoughts and some insight to maybe educate me and our listeners a little bit. But for me, this is all kind of new, this kind of aggression and this kind of outward. We're doing this in the light of day and in public and telling people we're doing it. That to me is, wow, brazen.
Yeah. So we know that there's a long history of, there was a history in this country of voter intimidation at one point in time, in the 50s and 60s. And, anytime that people of color were offered an opportunity to vote. And what we're seeing is reflections of that time today. So there are organizers who not only are calling people and offering information that is inaccurate, telling people that mail-in voting is no longer valid, that is false, telling people that mail-in ballots are on hold until a decision was made, that was false. And even though we got a positive decision, we've had to constantly make calls to let people know mail-in voting is still intact, continue to vote, continue to participate in this democratic process. We're also seeing people who are being, that there's some slight intimidation that's going on. We, at these polls, people are being challenged. People are being asked questions about whether or not this is their polling place. There's a lot of various issues that are going on, but the most prominent that we're seeing is misinformation as it relates to these reforms. They're telling people that you can't participate. Vote by mail is no longer valid. You do it, your ballot will not be counted. And so we have to be able to counter that with our own communication strategy that lets people know that, yes, it's still in effect, and it will be in effect after this decision by the Pennsylvania Supreme Court.
Now, what do you do with groups that blatantly out and out lie? And this is, again, we've always seen, some of this on the fringe. There's always been, some things like this. But I mean, right now, front and center, the kind of campaigns that you're talking about, you see quite often. What do we do with those kind of groups, with the moneyed interests that are pushing that kind of misinformation?
Mm-hmm. Well, so there are organizations that many of us in the state of Pennsylvania have a lot of trust in. There's the Common Causes, there's the PA Voices of the world, there's the League of Women Voters. Those are the organizations that you need to continue to count on for accurate information, beyond what you may get in the text, or what you may get in a letter, or what you may get in a phone call, because we're the organizations that are out here constantly running, doing communication strategies to ensure that you understand what's at stake here and what you're able to do to help with what's at stake here. So continue to trust the organizations that you've always trusted, and if there's any doubt, give us a call, give us an email, or any other organization that you typically trust, to make sure you know what's right.
And the website, if you want to check out their work, commoncause.org/Pennsylvania, or just commoncause.org. If you're in a different one of our other listening areas across the country, they're a nationwide organization. Whether you're in Chicago, or you're in Minneapolis, you're in Madison, or Milwaukee, or Loma Linda, wherever you are, Daytona Beach, any of our listening areas across the country, you can go to commoncause.org and check out the state that you're in and find the work that they're doing. Now, across the country, we're seeing this kind of assault on voting rights, especially in states like Pennsylvania, where Republicans control the legislature and pursue a lot of really draconian kind of stuff. And in fact, here not too long ago, our governor, Tom Wolf, vetoed SB 573 to protect voters while at the voting polls from election day harassment. Because again, it seems to me Republicans not only hate working people, but hate voters too. Yeah. I'm curious, this kind of stuff, when do voters, do you think, kind of get enough of this and say, enough already?
Well, I think we have to keep feeding them information, Rick. We have to keep people informed of what's really happening. If they don't know, to walk up to your polling station and see someone that's clearly not from your neighborhood, and that may be offering you false information, or you're feeling intimidated, is not a great feeling. And we're talking to people who say, I don't want to ask. They're struggling to ask questions or clarifying questions to people that they do know, and to see people who don't belong here or who don't live here, to be there in front of their polling stations isn't quite intimidating, and could kind of detract from them actually voting. So we want to keep people informed. We want to keep pushing the message out to them through your show, through our newsletters, through our cause nets, through our interviews with people like yourself. We want to continue to share this information with people, and they know, the people who know us know that we're sharing some facts and truth that they can count on.
That's good stuff. And for our listeners across the country, in the month of October, we're going to be doing movie events across the country with Greg Palast on his movie Vigilantes, Georgia's vote suppression hitmen, where in the movie they talk about, in that state of Georgia, because of SB 202, one person can challenge thousands of people's votes. They don't even have to know them. And it's these kind of games, these kind of dirty tricks that our friends on the right have been employing for decades to block people from voting and steal your vote. So a last question I've got for you, Khalif, in this moment, if voters are challenged, if voters go to the polls or ask for a ballot and they're denied, what do they do?
Typically what we're doing is we have poll watchers who are going to be at most of the major polling stations. They'll have T-shirts on. They'll have a phone number on those T-shirts. You can walk up to them. You'll see them with black and white T-shirts. You'll be able to call that 1-800 number, and there'll be an attorney on the line who can tell you about your rights. And if there's any further conflict, authorities will probably be called to make sure that you're able to vote safely.
It's good to have organizations like yours, like Common Cause, out there fighting the good fight. I love the fact that you're even keeled, you're calm. I can't be. I'm mad. I'm angry. I'm fit to be tied. But we need sane. We need rational. We need calm. And thank goodness you're here. I appreciate the time, Khalif.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Good stuff. Khalif Ali, Executive Director of Common Cause. WPA. Make sure you check out their work, commoncause.org/Pennsylvania. We'll get links out on social media. You can take a look at that. We'll take a quick break. Back with your thoughts. 1-866-416-RICK. 1-866-416-7425. This is The Rick Smith Show. We're working people on the talk. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1939. That was the day that the Hatch Act was enacted. The law was named after Senator Carl Hatch, a Democratic senator from New Mexico. The Hatch Act limits political activities by federal employees. One of the reasons the law was passed was due to allegations of corruption by the Works Progress Administration. The WPA was a key program of President Franklin Delano Roosevelt's New Deal plan to put people back to work during the Great Depression. But critics of the WPA alleged that the program was being used as a form of political patronage, and that the jobs were exchanged as a way to secure votes for the Democratic Party. Although an investigation found no conclusive proof of the allegations, Congress decided to act to define what was appropriate political engagement for a federal employee. Except for the president and the vice president, all federal employees and employees of the District of Columbia must follow the Hatch Act guidelines. Under the Act, federal employees cannot use the authority of their job to interfere with an election. They cannot be a candidate to a public office in a partisan election. They cannot participate in political activity while at work or while wearing a government uniform or driving a government vehicle. But the Hatch Act does not completely stop federal employees from participating in our political system. If they are off the clock, federal employees can still attend political rallies, contribute money to candidates, campaign for candidates, and help register voters. Ensuring the individual rights of free speech and elections free of corruption can be a difficult balancing act, especially for the thousands who call Uncle Sam their boss. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at laborhistoryin2.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
So again, dirty tricks, not something that our friends in the Republican Party are against. We've seen it for years. You go back to 2000 in Florida, Choice Point, purging voters because they're felons or their names sound like they might be felons or they may look like felons or, in a couple of years we think they might commit a felony. Some 90,000 people were purged off the voting rolls. And when they went back and they looked at them, they found out, they actually weren't. And in a state at the time that, was decided by a couple hundred votes, you'd think those 90,000, mostly people of color, because their names all sounded the same, do you think they would have all, probably voted for the guy who lost? Yeah, probably. And I argue we'd be a very different country. But again, it's the dirty tricks, and they've learned. 2000 you had that. 2004 you had the caging, where they sent out a bunch of little cards, do not forward. And if you didn't return it, they purged you off the voting roll. So when you showed up, sorry. Ohio, one of my favorite stories in Ohio, when groups were going out doing a whole bunch of voter registration drives. You had J. Kenneth Blackwell out there going, no, we're not taking any voter registration cards unless it's on 80-pound paper. Going back to like an 1800 something law, because who was organizing and who were doing those voting registration drives? Oh yeah, union groups and community groups. Poor people, working people, don't want them voting, and they were trying to tap down the vote. 2010, Tom Corbett was asked, "What do you think your chances are? If we can hold the vote down in Philadelphia, we'll do fine." Those people. That dog whistle. When they used to use a dog whistle. Now it's just out and out blatant. Now they're out and out saying, they're cheating. They're thieves. Those people. Very scary times. 2012, you had voter ID schemes pop up all across the country, knowing that a lot of people, who, especially poor and working class people, don't have driver's license. If you don't have a car, why do you need a driver's license? Oh, you need one to cash a check. Well, if you don't have a checking account, do you need it? Well, you need it if you ever rent a car or rent a hotel. Well, if you don't have the money to rent a car, or if you don't have a house, you're not renting a car or a hotel. The whole idea was tap down the vote. Exclude certain groups, poor and working class people. And again, when you hear people like Rick Santorum talk about we're going to rewrite the Constitution, the idea, again, is the original, what they believe the original intent to be. You know, white landowning males, 21, they're the only ones who can vote. Women, no rights at all. You know, blacks, 2/3 of a person. In the fields, women in the kitchen, gays in the closet. You know, that kind of stuff. And they are moving towards policy that's going to make that their reality. And they're not shy, they're not bashful about it. There was talk here in this state for a while, because it's still on the books, that voting age is 21 on the books in Pennsylvania. Now, federal law lowers that to 18. There's talk of no, we're not going to follow federal law. We're going to go back to 21. Why? Because, well, younger people are going, the Republican Party's crazy. We're going to vote for someone else. Can't have that. So let's try and purge them. And for me, look, I don't care who you vote for. I do actually, but honestly, for this experiment to work, for self-governance to work, everyone has to have access to the ballot box. And it should be easy. Should be much easier. So that more people participate. Because I've always said it, you can't complain if you don't participate. If you didn't vote, shut up. And when a large percentage of people in this country don't vote, a lot of people should really shut up. Now everyone's like, oh, we got to reach out to Republicans and change their minds. You're not going to change them. I want to have conversations with them. I want to engage them. I want to understand. Because I think we have to have dialogue. But I think you got to win people over who want a functional democracy, who want rights, who want what we grew up believing in. Sadly, where we're heading, and this is where I'm freaked out. This is not the America I grew up in. This is not the one I thought I would grow old in. This is a much, much more frightening place because of the people who want to control everything. I mean, the people who tell us they want government out of our lives want to be front and center. And they are the scariest characters. They are the most deadly characters. The people who espouse their religious belief and wear it on their sleeves, those are the people I run from. And we should all be running from. So for me, with the Pennsylvania Supreme Court saying, hey, we're going to allow and maintain the ability of people to be able to vote and make it more convenient, that is a huge win for voters in Pennsylvania. That is a good thing. The hope is we can expand even further, because it's just the beginning. And all across this country, we can expand and move into the 21st century and make voting accessible for everybody. Just my thoughts.
It's going to get worse. And I think that we will be updating it, maybe even for weeks to come.
Death toll rises in Kentucky floods as extreme heat and fires sear the West. Good times for big oil. Plus,
this is a major piece of legislation that they say would pay down the national debt, cut health care costs, fight climate change, and battle inflation.
Manchin Schumer compromise bill could be a game changer for climate.
All of those game changers and more straight ahead. From BradBlog.com, I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
Things could get much hotter, according to climate activist Al Gore. Gore went on the Sunday shows this weekend, warning that our atmosphere could get a lot worse. Thanks, Al. Where were you 20 years ago when we could have done something about... I'm sorry, he what?
This is your Green News.
Well, maybe if more people had voted for him than the other guy, he would have had a chance to be... Oh, I'm sorry, what?
This is your Green News Report.
Say hi to Tipper. What?
Okay, Desi Doyen, we can't even keep up anymore. One disaster after another from coast to coast across the U.S.
Yes, sadly, in Kentucky, as we go to air, at least 37 people are now confirmed dead after unprecedented rains late last week triggered historic flash floods that swept homes off their foundations and destroyed bridges, roads, and communications. More heat and rain are in the forecast. Kentucky's Democratic Governor Andy Beshear warned on CNN that the death toll is likely to rise in the hardest hit areas and that recovery will take years.
We're going to be there for you, not just today and tomorrow. We're going to be there for you next year.
In Oregon, at least 10 deaths have been linked to the persistent, record-breaking heat wave searing the Pacific Northwest. In Northern California, a state of emergency after the McKinney fire in just hours became the largest fire in the state so far this year and killed at least 2 people. In Montana, the Elmo wildfire rapidly tripled in size to more than 11 square miles. All of these fires driven by heat, high winds, and extreme dryness plaguing the West. But as the climate emergency wreaks havoc across the United States, times are pretty good for big oil. They're raking in record profits.
That's nice.
Oil giants ExxonMobil, Chevron, and Shell announced they profited a combined $46 billion over just 3 months in the second quarter, in part due to high gas prices on consumers.
So those were the months that they were raising the gas prices on all of us.
Yes. On Capitol Hill, Democratic leaders are pushing for the Senate to quickly pass historic new legislation on climate, energy, and more in the Inflation Reduction Act, a deal struck between Democratic Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia and Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer. If the bill passes, it would mark the largest climate investment ever in U.S. history, nearly $370 billion in new funding for emissions reduction and clean energy. The bill uses 2 main levers, private industry and households. For industry, the bill expands incentives to accelerate renewable energy, domestic green hydrogen, domestic clean tech manufacturing, advanced nuclear, carbon capture and removal, and decarbonizing agriculture and emissions-intensive chemical, steel, and cement industries. For households, the bill includes 10 years of subsidies for American families to cut energy costs, making it cheaper to electrify their homes and boost energy efficiency and weatherization, along with rebates for both new and used electric vehicles. Independent analyses calculate it will cut U.S. emissions roughly 40% by 2030. But there's a catch. To get Manchin's vote, the bill also shackles renewable energy development on public lands to the expansion of fossil fuel development on public lands and requires streamlining permitting of new energy infrastructure, but that benefits both fossil and renewable. It also increases royalties for the fossil fuel industry and requires a steep new fee, the first ever, for leaks of climate-warming methane. Some environmental groups have criticized those compromises, but climate policy expert Dr. Leah Stokes of UC Santa Barbara on MSNBC called it a game changer.
We can't miss the forest for the trees here because literally the forest will burn down if we do. So it's not ideal, it's not perfect, but what we're talking about here is a really small emissions penalty and payment compared to huge pollution cuts on the other side of the ledger.
Overall, sounds great. Can't wait for Kirsten Sinema to kill it.
Exactly. The bill must also pass the House and make it through Senate parliamentary procedures and survive Republicans throwing everything at it. And obstructionist Democratic Senator Kirsten Sinema of Arizona, whose vote is crucial for passage, has not said whether she supports the bill.
I'm sure it will all be fine. What could possibly go wrong? For much more on all of these stories and the ones we couldn't get to today, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. Find, follow, and share us planet-wide on the Facebooks and the Twitters at Green News Report. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your Green News Report.
Are you
tired of think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So I love the fact that you've now got 40 members of Congress asking the IRS and the U.S. Treasury to start looking into all of these right-wing groups. Because remember, when the Tea Party was doing their thing, they were organizing around the idea, we're 501c3s, we're tax exempt, don't tax us. Because, again, we're taxed enough already. Now you've got these crazy right-wing groups going, no, we're all churches now. Anything to avoid taxes. Now, look, I've joked about starting the Church of Collective Bargaining, but I've never would I have done it as, hey, I'm actually a church, don't tax me. Because, well, that's illegal. You don't do that. That's not how our conservative friends think. Not at all. Anything to get away with, well, something. And not surprising that a Trumpkin at the head of the IRS still, which is bizarre to me. Joe, come on. Move him along. Just my thoughts. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on the money and where it's flowing, who it's flowing to. Maybe a little bit about this story. I've asked our good friend Lisa Graves to share some thoughts. Lisa is the executive director of True North Research. They are a corporate watchdog group. She is my favorite corporate watchdog. Lisa, thanks for taking time for us.
Thanks, Rick. Thank you so much. And thanks for flagging that really shocking story that some of these right-wing groups have tried to declare themselves and actually apparently have declared themselves with the help of the IRS to be churches when they're not churches at all. It really is shocking and outrageous.
I may disagree because their God is money and that is what they're pursuing. So if that's the case, they are worshiping at the church, the altar of profit. I mean, you hear them talk about prosperity gospel. This seems to fit.
Yeah, it really was surprising. And then to trace some of the roots out, the Politico story was really interesting. And I definitely commend it to your listeners because they were tracking how some of these groups, like a Tony Perkins group, is tied to Michelle Bachmann, that former congressperson from Minnesota who, was notorious for making such extreme statements. Although I guess Lauren Boebert is giving her a run for her money along with Marjorie Taylor Greene. But
I so miss Michelle Bachmann. I mean, she was crazy, but she was a fun kind of crazy. I mean, she wasn't really an evil kind of, at least I didn't think she was an evil, mean crazy. She was a fun kind of crazy. What we've got now, evil, sadistic, violently crazy, whole different crazy in my view.
Well, it is a surprising turn because, to have people who are running around with people who are involved in insurrectionist efforts, the people who surrounded Lauren Boebert or who she has surrounded herself with, and just this whole stew of craziness that Marjorie Taylor Greene has said, it's astonishing. But then there's Matt Gaetz. Like you couldn't write a novel with characters like this. I wouldn't have the creativity to imagine such a cast of characters who seem so opposed to the very fundamental notions of our democracy. But, there they are. And now they're aided not just by these right-wing groups that have been really getting very involved in politics in lots of ways, very involved in elections. But now they have gone, and with the apparent help of the IRS guy that Trump appointed, they've gone and declared themselves churches. And I don't know if there's anything that we can do about it. I hope so, because I think a church ought to be a church and, shouldn't be confused with a right-wing operation, right-wing group.
But here's the thing, and this is where the right-wing message machine, the outrage candy machine, you got to give them credit. They've built a megaphone like none other. This is where they will use this when someone does crack down on them and say, they're victimizing us. They're targeting us. They're targeting our churches. The messaging is going to go there. Just like, back during the Tea Party era, in the 10s, they're coming after us. No, they're coming after you because you're breaking the law. No one else is breaking the law. It's you. You're breaking the law. That's why they're coming after you. You're not victims for any other reason than you're criminals.
Well, the thing that was really surprising to me, and I feel like there was so much hype around what happened with those 2010 Tea Party groups, was these were groups that were registering with the IRS with the name party in them. If the IRS wasn't scrutinizing them to see whether they were actually a political party or something and not an actual charity, the IRS would not have been doing its job. And Bob O'Hare from the Washington Post wrote a great piece about the real story behind that was sort of occluded by some of the hyperbole in the news and some Democrats who caved about what was really happening. The reality was the IRS nonprofit sector was doing its job to look into who should have this privilege, the privilege of not paying taxes. Not every group is entitled to that privilege, and they should be scrutinizing entities that describe themselves as political parties, that they're not a charity that someone can give a tax-deductible donation to. You can't give tax-deductible donations to political parties. And so, I think it was really misconstrued then. And I think, like you said, now here we are with this situation where these groups are, in some ways, in my opinion, making a mockery of our tax code, but that's not been done before. There's a lot of mockery of our tax code going on by big corporations, and apparently some of these, really right-wing groups that now call themselves churches.
But Lisa, we've got the best democracy money can buy. I mean, and it's evidently fairly cheap. I look at the story coming out of Wisconsin, where you've got Ron Johnson running for re-election, even though he said he was going to terminate himself, but he's now changed his mind. I guess I don't know. Was it a vision from God? Was it uprising of people begging him and pleading and crying? I'm not quite sure, but he's broken his promise. He's running for re-election, and thanks to a couple of billionaires who have pumped money into some nonsense PAC, Wisconsin Truth PAC.
Yeah, the name is Orwellian. The name is Orwellian, and those two billionaires have been up to all sorts of no good. There's Diane Hendrickson, who basically inherited and helped build this ABC building supply with her husband, who's deceased. And she's used her fortune to really try to, dominate Wisconsin. She's the person who, was caught on tape whispering to Scott Walker about how they were going to destroy unions in Wisconsin, public unions and private sector unions, and has been, at the heart of a lot of sort of right-wing operations here. And then there's the U-Lines, who got their start from their father's money and then launched this business supply company. And they've been funding all sorts of stuff, like, the Heartland group. They're in Chicago that denies climate change. They've funded people to, early on to attack just common sense rules to respond to the pandemic, and all sorts of sort of right-wing extremism. Uline seems to be at the heart of it. So I guess in that sense, Ron Johnson is in good company with his fellow like-minded extremists. But in my personal opinion, I think he's not representing Wisconsin well at all. And as you know, Rick, was the guy who tried to get delivered these fake fraudulent ballots, which are really ballots of treason, on January 6th.
And then lied about it. I mean, again, this is one of those moments, though. I got to be honest. I would defend him lying, because it really is a crime worth lying about. This is one of those things where you really do try and cover it up, because look, the Secret Service is deleting their stuff. The Pentagon is they're deleting their stuff. Homeland Security is deleting stuff. So when they're all deleting stuff, they know what they know.
Yeah. Well, Lauren Windsor caught him on tape admitting that he was only involved, as he said, for 5 minutes. But I don't know whether you've ever heard of a 5-minute exception to criminal law, but there's not one. You don't get the 5-minute rule. Well, I was only engaged in active
treason for 5 minutes. Yeah,
that's not who really has tried to help Trump spread his lies about elections and election fraud that have been debunked. And he was more than willing to do the bidding of the right-wing lawyers and people surrounding Trump to try to basically steal our election while claiming that they were stopping the steal. It is really outrageous.
Orwellian. I mean, that's the only thing I can keep coming back to. And again, you brought up Diane Hendricks, the billionaire who caught on tape, as you said, having this orgasmic moment about when do we get right to work. And I'm going, this is the number one thing that this woman, a billionaire who could have anything she wants, and what she wants is to take rights away from working people. That's what gets her excited. The absolute power. And this is, I mean, for me, that's a telling kind of thing, that you have these people who have unlimited resources, could do immense good, and what they want to do is make people's lives worse.
Yeah, Diane Hendricks, really is also interesting and horrifying in a sense that she also is put on the Bradley Foundation board. That's a foundation in Wisconsin that was created by these two brothers who were super anti-union way back in the day. And she was put on that board. I don't think she's on there right now, but she was on there with Art Pope, the guy in North Carolina who has really helped destroy fundamental democratic processes in North Carolina. He's like the other Koch brother. He's been helping Charles Koch with his operations, political operations with AFP, American Prosperity, for a number of years. And so here you have a billionaire in Diane Hendricks, who not only has her own money that she's injecting into the elections in all these dark money ways, honored by these right-wing groups like the Right-Wing Independent Women's Forum, but also she gets to help direct, or has helped direct, a nearly $1 billion fund through foundations to some of these right-wing groups that have really trying to destroy our public education system, trying to, undermine fair courts and the whole like. And so it is, I guess there's not enough money for them. They just want to use their money to, fundamentally undermine the things that have made America great in the past century.
Yeah, they want the power and control. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show here with Lisa Graves. She's the executive director of True North Research, corporate watchdog group. If you want to check out the work that they do, truenorthresearch.org. Also, you can check out this slew of other groups, CokeDocs.org, boldrethink.org. Lots of things to look at, lots of information. Now, you brought up the money, and look, there's a lot of money that goes into this. I look at Hendricks and Uline. They give about $3.5 million to this Wisconsin Truth. Because who could be against Wisconsin Truth? Who could be against that? But they gave this money to this PAC. And in return, thanks to the 2017 tax cuts that Johnson voted for and Republicans rammed through without Democrats voting for, they got multiples of that in tax returns, which again is going to go into a system to ensure that the wealthy continue to have power and control. And one of those places clearly going to be our Supreme Court. Because, lots of bad decisions are on the horizon. If you think Roe was bad, hold on. There's more coming.
Yeah, that's right.
I go back to the idea that I hate the internet for a whole bunch of reasons, and some of it is that they're terrible.
Yeah, put into groups to really capture the Supreme Court and try to change our laws. And Charles Koch, there's a document on our site, on that Koch Doc site, where Charles Koch is basically telling his funders that their two priorities are the Trump tax cut, which made the billionaire Koch even richer, and the courts. In terms of really capturing the courts to advance this agenda, to roll back our rights to the Lochner era, back a century to before the New Deal. And so, it is really troubling that this right-wing faction in the court is doing so much damage. And like you said, they've chosen some cases for the next term that could very well undermine our very democracy, the whole process of the American people having their votes counted, and versus set aside by these extremely partisan, gerrymandered, sort of jerry-rigged legislatures.
Yeah, I mean, the North Carolina case being, front and center, but there's going to be more coming up. I mean, we had the case about the EPA this last time, EPA in West Virginia. Evidently, we're no longer going to be able to say, hey, we want clean air and water. Evidently, that's going to be the benevolence of corporate America to the Kochs and to the Hendricks and to the Ulines and to the billionaire class, whether we can have clean air and water. Think about that for a minute. How frightening is that?
Yeah, that decision was so outrageous. I worked to try to make sure people understood the dark money behind that decision and its implications, because that decision can be used now as a hammer to try to destroy rights for workers in terms of safety on the job at the plant. It can be used to basically destroy our ability to protect endangered species. It can affect our rights under communications law and other things. And so we really do have a court that's out of control, that is very extreme and is determined to use its power to undermine fundamental American freedoms. And I think Americans should be coming together to say, no, this is not what we need in our 21st century. We need to have our voices heard, and we need to make sure that our laws protect us from corporate excess versus, like you said, Rick, these corporations and these CEOs in particular have so much money at their disposal. Then they have more from the huge tax cut. And then what are they doing? They're plowing that money into our politics, into our elections, into public policy to try to rip away our hard fought rights, like the right to make sure that we can get access to clean air or cleaner air and clean water. It is really something that people should be genuinely alarmed about and be joining together to organize against it.
And sadly, what I fear is we're not going to wake up to the realities of this until it's far too late. And the cautionary tale, look, I grew up in Cleveland, home of the Clean Air and Clean Water Act. I grew up in the 70s when Lake Erie was so polluted, nobody went in it. I grew up in the 70s when there was acid rain and you had to check the smog index before you went outside. When most kids had asthma because the air was so bad to breathe. We learned those lessons and said, hey, we need the EPA to clean this up. And it was a Republican president, Nixon, who put that into place. Now we're going, hey, no, we've learned our lesson. Corporate America's better now. No, they're not.
No, I often think about how it is that the sort of Trump world and the Leonard Leo dark money funded world has turned our Constitution upside down, where Nixon turns out to be a hero on those issues. Who knew? Even though he was corrupt in his own way, in substantial ways. But now this corruption has spread, and it's not focused on one guy or just the guys around him. It really is this massive effort to overturn these laws that help protect our rights and our interests. And that's not because the American people want that. That's because some very rich funders want that. We've looked into funders tied to Leonard Leo before, Charles Koch, Barry Said, the guy who sold a bunch of power strips from his company in Chicago. He's a big guy. We've seen their ties to other ties of these big right-wing sort of elites to Leonard Leo. But what the American people don't know is who really is funding this capture of the court and what can we do about it. I think we fundamentally have a lot of options that we can pursue if we have a Congress that has enough members, progressive enough, to try to protect us from this out-of-control court. So we really need more organizing, more mobilization.
No, we need more educated, active voters, and we need a tax code that says, you know what, you have done bad things with all the money we've given you, because we've given you this money because we were told you were going to plow it back into businesses to create jobs, to make lives better, to make communities better. You were going to, because you're the smart people, you know how to use the money. And yes, they do. They use the money to make themselves more powerful, to make themselves wealthier, to make themselves better off, while the rest of us are struggling and fighting just to survive. It's time to tax the hell out of these people and start using this in a much better way. So last question I've got for you, in looking over the next days and weeks, months, what are you paying attention to where the money's flowing?
Right. Well, personally, I think everyone should be reading the reports about how much these oil companies are gouging us for. The right-wing Fox noise machine wants to blame Biden for gas prices. Presidents don't control gas prices. Oil companies do. And those oil companies are exploiting what's happening in Russia to make the biggest profits they've ever had on our backs. If anything, there should be signs at the pump, basically saying what those CEOs are paid and what they're paying their shareholders out of our pockets. So I think, that awareness would be really helpful. But going forward, we're looking hard at this effort by the right wing to rebrand itself as the parents' party by attacking school boards, attacking public education. So that's, part of the work we're doing in the fall. And we're also working on, trying to tell this story about how much this dark money is distorting the decisions by the U.S. Supreme Court and the efforts of these same groups of Leonard Leo to basically capture state Supreme Courts. So we've got our work cut out for us, Rick, and I'd love to be on anytime to chat with you and your audience. Thank you so much for having me on.
Great stuff, Lisa. I appreciate the time and the work that you guys do there at True North Research. And yes, anytime, come back and share with us. Good stuff, Lisa. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Rick.
Our good friend Lisa Graves. Again, make sure you check out the website there at truenorthresearch.org. We'll get links out on social media. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. If you're a fan of the show, you've heard our Labor History in 2 segments, and you can hear them on the radio pretty much anywhere in the U.S. Labor history has never been more important than it is right now. So here's what we'd like you to do. Tell a Teacher. Tell a teacher that labor history is important and that they can get digestible 2-minute lessons that are absolutely free. Free to download, free to use, free to share. Tell a teacher to go to thericksmithshow.com/history and help us put labor back where it belongs, in the classroom. You know, generations of American workers fought, bled, and died to build the American way of life. It's our job to keep their stories alive. Go tell a teacher that we're here to help them do just that. Find us at thericksmithshow.com/history today.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
You know, Lisa brought up the Lochner era, something that I've talked about. And look, I'm not a lawyer, but I know it was a bad time. I know they used the excuse of liberty of contract. It's your freedom, it's your liberty to work in deplorable conditions for poverty wages, unlimited hours, because you made the choice. It's your right. It's your right. And understand, they used this decision of a bakery shop owner from 1905 who wanted to work his employees, 60, 70 hours a week, because there was a law that said you can't work people in the Bake Shop Act in New York. Back then, you can't work them more than 60 hours a week. They set a maximum hour law. No more than 60 hours a week. It's unhealthy. It's unsafe. Don't do it. They're saying, no, I want to work my employees 70, 80, 100, whatever. It's their right. They should be able to work as much as they want. It's their liberty. Took it all the way to the Supreme Court, and he won. A guy named Joseph Lochner. And that decision from, I guess, like 1910 all the way until, I think, like 35, 38, it stood, known as the Lochner era, and they used that decision to shoot down every minimum wage law, every maximum hour law, every law passed by legislatures that would put something between workers and employers. Because understand, where I'm at in Pennsylvania, the workers' compensation law still refers to employer-employee as master and servant. And that's how they view that relationship. It's the master and servant. You are the servant as a worker. So you have no rights under the law, is what they believe. That you should just be grateful that you have a job and you should do whatever you're told for whatever it is, because you agreed to that. And that you have the liberty to leave. But here's the problem with that. The problem with that is if all employers are the same, if they're all crummy, which the collusion was rampant back then, they were all crummy jobs, what choices do working people have? And the answer is none, and that's what they want. That's what they understand, the power, the moneyed power, the moneyed control. And this is where we're moving back to. When John Edwards back, a number of years ago was talking about two Americas, this is what that conversation was about, is about the rich and everybody else. Not the rich and poor and then, the people in the middle. No. This is about the rich and then, everybody else, because everyone else is going to be some variation of broke because of this. And we're going to see this Supreme Court making a lot of those decisions. And the attacks on labor unions are going to continue and going to intensify as this court gets more aggressive, as Republicans get more aggressive and emboldened. Look, if there's a Republican governor in my state of Pennsylvania next January, Pennsylvania will be the next right-to-work state. There is no question. I called that 2 years ago. There is no question. So if you're a working person and you think unions do well for working people, raise wages, safe working conditions, good retirement, good health care benefits, and you want to protect that, Doug Mastriano is not your candidate. No matter how much you think, he's my guy, he is not your candidate. Scary, scary stuff. Love to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. If you miss any portion of the program, make sure you grab the podcast. Always there, always available. Quick break, right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. I'm Rick Smith, And this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1939. That was the day that the Hatch Act was enacted. The law was named after Senator Carl Hatch, a Democratic senator from New Mexico. The Hatch Act limits political activities by federal employees. One of the reasons the law was passed was due to allegations of corruption by the Works Progress Administration. The WPA was a key program of President Franklin Delano Roosevelt's New Deal plan to put people back to work during the Great Depression. But critics of the WPA alleged that the program was being used as a form of political patronage, and that the jobs were exchanged as a way to secure votes for the Democratic Party. Although an investigation found no conclusive proof of the allegations, Congress decided to act to define what was appropriate political engagement for a federal employee. Except for the president and the vice president, all federal employees and employees of the District of Columbia must follow the Hatch Act guidelines. Under the Act, federal employees cannot use the authority of their job to interfere with an election. They cannot be a candidate to a public office in a partisan election. They cannot participate in political activity while at work or while wearing a government uniform or driving a government vehicle. But the Hatch Act does not completely stop federal employees from participating in our political system. If they are off the clock, federal employees can still attend political rallies, contribute money to candidates, campaign for candidates, and help register voters. Ensuring the individual rights of free speech and elections free of corruption can be a difficult balancing act, especially for the thousands who call Uncle Sam their boss. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at laborhistoryin2.
Is it a good deal to sell out your personal integrity for cash from notorious scoundrels? Depends on your sellout price, chortled some 48 ethically stunted professional golfers who've peddled both their honor and honesty to the murderous moneyed monarchs who rule Saudi Arabia. The golfers, who are already millionaires, rush to grab money thrown at their feet by the royal kingdom, which oddly thinks it can launder its public image by sponsoring a money-soaked global golf tour. Of course, a golf tournament needs golfers, but the Saudis had none, so they simply bought some. First, former stars Phil Mickelson and Greg Norman signed away their integrity to join, taking at least $200 million apiece. Then, Dustin Johnson and Bryson DeChambeau took $150 million each from Team Saudi, and the likes of Brooks Koepka and Sergio Garcia quickly scrambled to get theirs. Worse than the golfers' unsightly money grubbing, however, is their insufferable dishonesty, trying to whitewash their taking of what is literally blood money. Mickelson faked moral outrage at the kingdom's rulers, calling them less than savory individuals, and piously proclaiming that he did not condone human rights violations. But he certainly has condoned and cashed the checks written to him by the violators. But Greg Norman, the former pro who led recruitment of golfer talent for the Saudis, offered the most pathetic moral excuse for selling out. Asked how he could link arms with a potentate so barbarous as to have had a critic of the regime murdered and chopped into pieces, Norman said, "Look, we've all made mistakes." This is Jim Hightower saying there's a word that describes what these golfing multimillionaires are doing: disgusting. The good news is that most pros, including bigger name stars like Tiger Woods, Rory McIlroy, and Justin Thomas, have some values that they refuse to trade for dollars. The Hightower Radio Lowdown is made possible by you lowdowners who subscribe to our monthly newsletter, The Hightower Lowdown. You know who you are. Thank you.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So, primary day in a number of states across the country. Everyone looking at Kansas. Because of obviously the abortion issue there. But I don't think enough people looking at Ohio. Ohio so loves primary day that they're doing it again. Kind of like deja vu all over again, to steal Yogi Berra's quote. And again, it's nice to know the good folks in Ohio have the perfect roads, the healthcare system that covers everyone, education that's second to none. It's great to know that they can't spend $20, $25 million any other way than entertaining another primary day. It's so wonderful and refreshing to see a state at the top of their game. And I say that in the most facetious of manners. And here to share some thoughts on just that topic, I've asked Desiree Timms to come talk with us. She's the president and CEO of Innovation Ohio, innovationohio.org, their website. Desiree, thanks for taking time for us.
Thanks for having me, Rick.
So, like I said, in kind of a snarky, sarcastic kind of way, it's great to know that Ohio is the perfect state that you can just, dig a hole and burn $25 million in it.
It's crazy. And we are a state led by Republicans who are using megaphones every day to talk about how high things are with the economy and inflation, yet they're wasting money. And that's because of their cheating and their gerrymandering and their rigging of not just elections, but districts. And so because the Republicans want to continue to cheat, they wanted to cheat their way out of fair districts. And so now we have a second primary that's costing us $25 million.
Jeez, I seem to remember, and I know this is a long time ago. I'm getting older, as you can tell from the gray. But didn't our friends in the Republican Party, didn't they used to tell us something about fiscal responsibility and spending the taxpayers' dollars judiciously and using those dollars in the best way possible? I seem to remember, maybe my memory's fading, but I seem to remember something like that.
Yeah, this Republican Party today in 2022 is nothing like the Republican Party of 2000, right? And so the Republican Party today, they don't care about small government. They want government in your bedrooms and in your hospital rooms. The Republican Party today, they don't care about fiscal responsibility. They want to make sure corporations and billionaires pay $0 in taxes, and they will run up the tab accordingly. And so when it comes to their friends and their guys, it's zero for them. When it comes for people who make minimum wage, people who are working in and out of factories, who are getting screwed for the last decade or so, they're going to tax you. Fiscal responsibility is not a thing when it comes to regular people like us. And so this Republican Party is extreme, wrapped up in MAGA gear, and unrecognizable. And
I would go with the criminal at this point. I'm watching what's going on around the January 6th hearings, and I'm looking at the fact that the Pentagon, the Secret Service, everybody seems to be deleting texts and covering things up. And I was thinking about your state and the Republicans who have decided that the rule of law doesn't apply to them when it comes to drawing fair maps. When it comes to following the court's orders. I got to wonder how much of their texts are they deleting? How much of the records that they have are they in the process of burning? Because, well, I guess no laws really matter to them, right?
No, it doesn't. And I think we saw a hilarious tweet by former Secretary Clinton who responded, but her emails. And that's what rings in my head every time I see the Republicans acting so cowardly, deleting text messages. That was such a shocker. But what's even more shocking is that many conservative outlets never played the January 6th hearings, right? And so you have this shock factor, this wow factor only reaching a certain population here in the country. Meanwhile, Republicans are absolutely abdicating their duties and responsibilities. When we think about, as people, when we vote and we talk to our leaders and we say, we're going to pass a law that says you have to do this fairly. Not once would people think, but what happens if they just decide not to listen to the law, not to follow the law? What happens if the Supreme Court says you must do this and you decide, you know what? Nah, I'm not interested. Yeah. Well, that's what's happening right now in Ohio.
I've been asking the question, when do they start locking these people up? How long does it take for them to, fifth time of not following the law? Do the court just finally go, you know what? We got to start locking people up. Governor, start enforcing the law. Somebody start and this is what happens when you have one party rule.
That's exactly right. And Governor DeWine is on this commission, and often in front of the press, he'll play both sides. The Republicans control Ohio with a super majority, meaning Democrats really have absolutely no power. And so they feel like they can get away with murder, which is why they're doing whatever they want when it comes to redistricting, voting rights. I mean, our Secretary of State, Frank LaRose, he's purged millions of people off the voter rolls. So people are going to show up in November thinking they're going to vote in the midterms and they won't be permitted to vote. This is something that we've seen time and time again as Republicans continue to shirk their duties. And so what is it going to take for them to follow the law? I think people are going to have to really hold them accountable and fight back. And hopefully the Republicans who are leaving the party in droves by the day leave the MAGA camp over there to the far extreme right and join and lock arms with the Democrats to get our country back on track.
Yeah, no, something that, and I'm hoping that people who have not participated, and this is the group that I keep appealing to, because there's such a large group. Hey, country under attack. One party kind of attacking. And if you look at what happened on January 6th and the fact that all of this information has been deleted, I can only come to one conclusion. They were all in on it, and they're covering all of this up. So time to start throwing the bums out, throw some other people in there, which is why I'm hopeful that in your state, someone like Representative Tim Ryan can become a Senator Ryan. Because I look at the hillbilly guy, J.D. Vance, dangerous and not very bright. I just a lot of scary there in my view.
Yeah, Tim Ryan is crushing it in poll after poll after poll. We're seeing Tim Ryan leading the chart here, and that's because he's doing what it takes. He's campaigning. He's everywhere. He's all across the state. He's in my hometown, in my city, in Dayton. He's in Mansfield. I mean, he's all over talking about jobs, talking about the things that help working people. I grew up very working class. We're used to, a community. We grew up seeing trucks being on the lots. Steel factories. That's what helped get my family into the middle class, was steel mills. And so you have to be able to talk the language that people understand. Where are the jobs? What happened to the Ohio we once knew? And who's going to help us build back better? And that person and that candidate is Tim Ryan, and it's not J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance wanted to pretend to be from Appalachia. He clings on to the Silicon Valley thing, and he has these billionaires bankrolling his campaign, and he's nowhere to be found. Well, that's not how you win in Ohio. And for everyone out there who says Ohio is a red state, well, we are a state that also elected Senator Sherrod Brown in 2018, and we went for Barack Obama twice. And Joe Biden did well in many of the swing counties, although he didn't win the state. But Tim Ryan is proving that most Ohioans and most of the people here, we're not extreme. We want someone who's going to get the job done. And that's Tim Ryan. He's raising the money, and he's on the ground, and he's doing the work, and it's showing in the polls.
Yeah, and look, he's talking the talk and walking the walk at the same time. And I look at, recently, and you're listening to the Rick Smith Show. We're with Desiree Tim. She's the president and CEO of Innovation Ohio. Make sure you check out their website, innovationohio.org. But if you look at, recently we had Republicans throw a little temper tantrum. All of the attention clearly has been on the fact that in the Senate, they blocked the PACT Act from going through. But I look at all the Republicans who voted against the CHIPS Act. That's going to, help reshore some of our manufacturing, take on China in ways that we haven't in decades. And because, look, I look at manufacturing as a national security issue. If we don't have the capacity to build things, if we can't make the smart chips that make our smart bombs smart, well, we're in trouble. So for me, in this moment, making sure that we can do this, kind of important. And I think Ohio key to that. And I think Tim Ryan is right. We got to take on China, and we got to take them on now.
We have to bring the jobs back to this country. And as a daughter of Dayton, we have to bring jobs back to Ohio. I grew up in a manufacturing town. And so when we got to a point during the pandemic where people couldn't order goods because plants overseas were shut down and we couldn't get the basics, I think people really understood, look, this is a problem and we need to build back better. We need to build it at home. Well, when it comes to the CHIPS Act and Intel coming to Ohio, I am very, very, very excited about Intel. Not only are they going to bring good jobs here, but it's going to help keep students here who are graduating, get into engineering, and the jobs that it will create will lead people into the middle class. Well, we had Republicans in Ohio vote against the CHIPS Act. Jim Jordan voted against the CHIPS Act. I mean, why are you voting against jobs? And so he wasn't the only Ohio Republican congressman to do that. And so there is a clear disconnect here amongst the Republican Party, the MAGA Republicans, and working people, right? And it comes down to the votes. And so we're going to keep yelling and saying it over and over again. The only way to really build back our economy and to make things fair is to build the middle class, not the 1%. The billionaires aren't trickling down their dollars to Susie and Johnny when they can't make their mortgage on time. It's the people who are providing the jobs and working every day. What the Republicans are doing right now is detrimental, not just to democracy, but to our economy. And so they just really, stumped on the faces of hardworking Ohioans by voting no on the CHIPS Act. But thankfully it passed, and we're going to have Intel, we're going to have those jobs so we can start getting the chips to reduce the car prices and everything else that the shortage has prevented people from accessing.
And for me, more importantly, it's going to reshore the capacity to produce. And it's something that, I've talked about extensively, the idea that, I go back to my grandparents' generation. The reason that we were able to win World War II and to take on fascism overseas was because we had the capacity to build things, to manufacture stuff, to be able to build a war machine and to maintain it. I don't know that we have that capacity, and our friends over at the Alliance for American Manufacturing actually wrote the book on all of our supply chain in the military that we desperately need foreign inputs on, which is kind of bizarre when you stop and you think about it. You go, you're in the middle of a war potentially, let's say with China, and you go, hey China, we would like some of those chips to make our smart bombs smart so we can bomb you with them. I don't know that works that way, does it?
That's right. It does not work that way. And the Republicans almost squandered the deal. Intel, there were rumors and reports that Intel was looking to go to Europe in case it failed. That's how bad it was. We almost, not just thinking about Ohio losing it, right? We almost lost it as a country to Europe. That's what the Republicans are doing. It's dangerous. It's a threat to our democracy. It's a threat to our GDP. It's a threat to our economy and a threat to our future. The Republicans are wrong, and it is an unrecognizable party. Today, I don't know who they are except for extremists.
Yeah. Let me ask you the other question on this, though, because I'll be honest with you. I'm uneasy handing over huge amounts of money to corporations. We've been doing it for too long, and our benefits are too few. We've been giving massive tax cuts to these corporations, and they've shown us what they do with that money. They buy their shares back and they enrich themselves. It never seems to trickle down. So in this, I can see some hesitancy in going, we're going to give $50 billion to an industry that's going to build factories here. I do want to make sure we get something for it, good union jobs, communities that can build around that kind of stuff. And there'd better be language that ensures that. But I can see being a bit hesitant about that, because I am. But this idea that we're in this desperate moment, something has to be done, and this is the way forward right now. I don't see how you vote against this.
That's exactly right. And anytime you have Joe Biden and Sherrod Brown at the table negotiating on behalf of workers, I'm going to hedge my bet on those two.
Yeah, but I got to tell you, Sherrod Brown is my pick for president one day. I am hoping he runs. I wanted him to run for a couple of years ago. He's that guy. Get me a Democratic governor in Ohio, and that can possibly happen. Lastly, I wanted to get your thoughts, because obviously Kansas is making their choice on the abortion issue. Ohio, kind of a crazy state on that too. Where are things? Where are you seeing things go here in the coming days and weeks and months in your state?
Yeah, I think it's very wild. Governor DeWine and Yost and the Republicans here really re-traumatized a 10-year-old child rape victim in Ohio that was forced to travel to Indiana to have an abortion after being raped. And so they said they didn't believe her. They said the story was false. Now they're going after the doctor. Well, in Ohio, we have the Cleveland Clinic, Ohio State Wexner. I mean, we are a state that's really leans and relies on our healthcare system, as we saw during COVID. And so now you're chastising medical professionals who are like, hey, am I going to lose my license? You have couples who are thinking about in vitro fertilization in order to have babies. The Republicans are threatening that. There was a state rep, Jean Schmidt, also a former member of Congress. She wants to introduce a bill to ban birth control. And so this is getting really extreme. And when we talk about banning birth control, when we talk about making sure women don't have access to IVF, we are literally in the bedrooms of married couples and people and the choices that they're making every single day. Next thing you know, and I saw this on the internet, they want to get rid of condoms. And so this is just extreme. This party, these people, they are not on your side. They're not on my side. They are not like us.
Yeah, they're saying the things that they've been saying quietly to each other. They're now screaming it out loud. They're saying the quiet parts out loud because they do. They feel emboldened. Now they feel is their moment to step on the gas and get as much as they can before everyone wakes up and goes, uh-oh, wait a second, they mean me. Because it's easy, isn't it, Desiree? It's easy to look at somebody else and go, I don't care about you. I don't care about that 10-year-old girl. I don't care about, them. It's when they go, wait a minute, they're actually talking about me. Hold on, wait, whoa, too late. And that's, I think, what people had better wake up to, because eventually we're all in the shark tank. It's just a matter of when that shark gets hungry for each and every one of us.
That's right. If you are not a multimillionaire or a billionaire, you are on the menu.
There you go. Desiree, I appreciate you taking some time for us. As always, great stuff. Keep up the great work there at Innovation Ohio. I hope you'll come back and share some more with us down the road.
Thanks, Rick.
Good stuff. Desiree Timms, again, make sure you check out the work that they do at innovationohio.org. We'll get links out on social media. You can take a look at that. Going to take a quick break right back after this. Remember, if you miss any portion of the program, grab the podcast. Wherever you get yours, you'll find ours, from iTunes to iHeart, Stitcher, Podbean, everywhere in between. There we are. Back after this. Are you tired of think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute. Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Check out the website, thericksmithshow.com. Brian, listening on WIOO here in Pennsylvania, asked the question, I don't understand why you have such a problem with Senator Mastriano. Seems like a good senator to me. It's because you libs have a problem with him having control, the kind of control that Governor Wolf has had for the last 8 years. Now you're going to see how we have liked the last 8 years. This is one of those kind of mental thoughts that scary. Understand, I think Wolf was in a tough spot with the pandemic. The governor of Pennsylvania, with a General Assembly unwilling to do anything to help. So he had to make executive choices. And like any leader, some are going to be unpopular. And when you have an entire party who their position is not good governance, their position is how do we tear down? How do we rip apart? How do we make them look bad? And we're seeing this at the national level. The PACT Act, that should have gone through without question. We shouldn't have had this whole kerfuffle. This should have just gone through. But no. We've got to pick and find, and no. But this idea that we're now going to punish our fellow citizens. See, this guy thinks that Wolf intentionally, punished him. And it's bizarre. Instead of the idea that, at the moment, made the best choices that were available. Horrible situation. Nobody wants to make those choices. But Governor Wolf stepped up and made choices. Whether you agree with them or not, whether you think they were extreme or not extreme enough, he made choices. And elections mean that. But a lot of my Mastriano supporting friends, of which I think this gentleman is, they view the decisions that Wolf made as a personal affront, that they were going after them individually, that this was to punish them, not to keep society safe, not for the good of we the people, but to go after them individually. And it's this kind of mental illness, kind of sickness, if you will, that they are the targets. They're if you remember a number of years ago, conservative groups all the Tea Party groups were filing for tax exempt status through the IRS. They were setting up all these little groups and they were going, no, we should be 501c3s and we should be tax exempt. And they were going, no, you're political organizations. No, you shouldn't be tax exempt. And the IRS was denying them. And they were going, see, they're going after us because they're not doing this to the libs. Well, the liberals weren't creating those kind of groups. They weren't breaking the law from the start. So no, the IRS wouldn't have denied them things that they weren't asking for. It's this kind of same scenario in a sense that they internalize all of this. It's personal. They're coming after me. They know my name personally. They're coming after me. And now they want to flip it around. They want to use government to come after each. And trust me, Mastriano will. He's going to go after the libs. He's going to sell lib tears. They believe this. Understand the things he's going to do. He's going to go after unions. They're going to pass right to work on day one. That's going to happen. So the rights of workers are going to be diminished. He's going to appoint someone to the Department of Labor who's going to use that department against working people, not to help, but as a bludgeon against. Abortions will be non-existent in this state because they're going to do that immediately. So women, good luck. And that means all of you, even ones who are kind of against it now, wait till something happens. And we're seeing a lot of these stories popping up. I was just reading one in the New York Times. I was excited about being pregnant until, something went wrong. And now my life could be in danger because no doctor wants to get involved in it. This is the world they're moving us towards. And this kind of theocratic, angry theocracy that they espouse. This is dangerous stuff. And the idea of using government to attack the enemies, that is really, doing it outwardly is something very new in this country. Attacking political opponents openly, something new. Patronage, something Donald Trump wants to make great again. Something relatively new. So this kind of angry, activist, theocratic, threatening kind of governance that some seem to want is, in a word, dangerous. And something we should be organizing around it. And look, people like Jeff, people, that support Mastriano, you're not going to reach them. You got to let them go. It's all of those millions of people who don't participate, who their heads in the clouds or in the sand or who knows where. It's all of those folks we've got to be reaching out. Friends, neighbors, coworkers who, they're all crooks. No, this is not that moment. They're all bad. No, this is not that moment. Well, I got tons of problems with the Democratic Party. I got tons of problems with Democrats not fighting and not pursuing good policy and making dumb decisions and all of that. These people are dangerous and, in my view, criminally dangerous. And we're seeing this playing out with the January 6th hearings. Where are all those text messages? Where's all that information uniformly having been deleted? Seems like conspiracy cover-up. But this idea, again, I go back to, this idea is fairly new, that we're going to use government as a tool, as a bludgeon, as something to attack our enemies, our political enemies. That's scary stuff. Something our political system has not seen in a long time. So am I concerned? Yeah, I'm concerned about Mastriano becoming governor because he will use every one of those appointed positions from Secretary of State to Department of Labor to the Health Secretary on down, not for good governance, not to make lives better, but to assault and destroy and gridlock and use government against the people of Pennsylvania. And look, they're going to move it state to state. You should be worried too, no matter where you are. Appreciate you tuning in. Missed any of the program, podcast, We'll see you back here next time. Thanks for tuning in.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.